They told you the Longbow won the 100 Years' War. Well, I'm sorry to inform you, they were all wrong. The Longbow won the moments, the glorious, terrifying, arrow-black moments that English chroniclers carved into legend and never stopped repeating. Crécy, Poitiers, Agincourt. 3 names that became a kind of religion. 3 battles where English archers stood in muddy fields and broke the finest cavalry in Christendom. But here is what the legends never mention. After Agincourt, the greatest English victory of the entire war, Henry V turned his army around, marched it to the nearest fortified city, and spent the next 5 weeks in the mud outside its walls. Waiting, digging, and watching his men die of dysentery, while the garrison sat safe behind stone and did absolutely nothing. The longbow that had shattered an army in an afternoon could not crack a gate. That is the truth the myths were built to hide.
If you want to hear more stories like this, battles where strategy defeated strength, where the impossible became real, where one decision changed the course of nations, then subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next chapter of history.
Understand what this war actually was. 116 years, dozens of campaigns, hundreds of engagements, and in the overwhelming majority of them, not a single archer in the open field. Just armies camped outside walls, waiting for surrender, starvation, and waiting for the slow mechanical logic of the siege to grind its way to a conclusion. Medieval warfare was not Agincourt. Medieval warfare was Calais. 11 months of blockade while the population ate rats and leather and finally walked out the gates, barely able to stand. Medieval warfare was Rouen in 1419, where the English surrounded the city but couldn't breach it, so they simply waited. 6 months. While thousands of Norman civilians, expelled from the city to save food, starved to death in the ditch between the walls and the English lines. Henry V refused to let them through. He needed the city to break, and it did. But not from arrows. The weapons that cracked the 100 Years' War open were not made of yew. They were made of wood and iron and rope and counterweight and, eventually, gunpowder. The trebuchet was already ancient when the war began. It had built its reputation in the Crusades, at the Siege of Acre, in the grinding campaigns of the Holy Land, where armies spent months reducing fortifications that no cavalry charge could touch. By the time Edward III dragged his siege train to Calais in 1346, the trebuchet was a mature instrument of destruction, capable of hurling projectiles the weight of a grown man with enough force to collapse battlements, shatter gatehouses, and break the psychological will of defenders watching their walls come apart, stone by stone. Think of it this way: the longbow was a scalpel, precise, rapid, devastating in the right hands against the right target. The trebuchet was a sledgehammer, and some problems require a sledgehammer. But the trebuchet had a fatal limitation. It was a monument disguised as a weapon. Once assembled, once the timber frame was raised and the counterweight hung and the sling calibrated, it went nowhere. It was architecture, a permanent installation that could take weeks to build and could be destroyed by a single well-organized sortie from the garrison. The men who built and operated these machines were among the most valuable specialists on any medieval campaign, worth more to an army than most knights. And they were irreplaceable. If your trebuchet engineer died, you didn't build another trebuchet. You waited outside the walls longer. There was a better answer coming. Nobody in the mid-14th century fully understood what it was. Gunpowder artillery entered the 100 Years' War the way most revolutions enter history, sideways, ugly and easy to dismiss. The first bombards were crude things, wrought iron staves bound with hoops like a barrel, firing stone balls with as much danger to their operators as to the enemy. They misfired, they burst. They were slow to load, miserable in rain, and produced more noise than damage. Contemporary commanders who saw them demonstrated almost uniformly concluded they were theater. They were wrong. They were looking at a prototype and calling it a failure. Over the next 70 years, French royal investment in artillery accelerated at a pace that had no precedent in medieval military history. Under Charles V and his successors, the Valois monarchy didn't just buy guns. They built institutions, permanent artillery corps, foundries, supply chains for powder, a technical culture of experimentation that treated warfare as an engineering problem to be systematically solved. England did none of this. England had the longbow. England kept the longbow. It was the military equivalent of perfecting the cavalry lance while your enemy invented the rifle. By the 1420s and 1430s, the gap had become visible in the field. French siege artillery could reduce fortifications that would have taken a trebuchet army weeks in a matter of days. And then came the Bureau brothers. Jean and Gaspard Bureau were not warriors. They were administrators, technocrats. Jean was a lawyer who had served in royal finance. Gaspard was a bureaucrat. Neither would have looked impressive on horseback. Together, they built the most effective military artillery corps in Europe. What they understood, and what made them genuinely revolutionary, was not any single technical innovation. It was the concept of system, mobile artillery, coordinated fire, systematic reconnaissance of target fortifications before bombardment began, standardized calibers so that ammunition could be shared between guns, supply infrastructure that kept the batteries firing continuously rather than stopping every few days to wait for more powder. They turned artillery from a spectacle into a machine, and between 1449 and 1453, they pointed that machine at English France. The campaign was methodical, almost cold. Chateau Gaillard, gone. Rouen, gone. Caen, gone. Falaise, Cherbourg. One by one, the fortresses that had taken England decades to capture and years to garrison fell in weeks. The English commanders inside them had no answer. Their walls, which had been adequate against anything the medieval world had previously thrown at them, were being disassembled from the outside. The stone that had made them safe for generations became, under sustained artillery fire, the thing that killed them. Collapsing sections buried defenders. Flying debris turned every bombardment into a lottery of survival. Some garrisons surrendered after days. They had no reason not to. The walls weren't going to hold. And then came Castillon, July 1453. English Gascony, the last significant territory England held in France, was collapsing under the French advance. John Talbot, the Earl of Shrewsbury, was 70 years old. He was the most celebrated English commander alive, a veteran of 40 years of French campaigning, a man whose name alone had once caused French garrisons to surrender. He led a relief army to Gascony with the confidence of a man who had seen the English way of war prevail again and again. He had never fought the Bureau brothers' artillery. The French had fortified their position, earthworks, stakes, guns arranged in interlocking fields of fire. It was not a medieval battlefield. It was a preview of the next 2 centuries of warfare. Talbot charged anyway. The guns opened up at close range. The English formation came apart. Men who had survived campaigns across half of France died in minutes on a field they had crossed expecting to win. Talbot was killed. His horse pinned him to the ground, and a French soldier finished it. He was the last English general to die in the 100 Years' War. He died the way the war itself died, not by sword or arrow, not in the romantic grammar of chivalry, but by gunpowder and iron and the remorseless arithmetic of a new kind of violence. The longbow lasted in the English imagination long after it ceased to matter on the battlefield. Parliament mandated archery practice in English parishes well into the 16th century, long after firearms had made the entire argument obsolete, long after Castillon, long after the last piece of English France had changed hands. There is something almost tragic in that image. Villages across England, men and boys shooting at butts on Sundays, practicing a skill that had already been rendered ceremonial by history. England had won the arguments. France had won the war. The trebuchet tore down walls. The bombard ended an era. The Bureau brothers dismantled an empire, one fortress at a time. And the longbow, the weapon of Crécy and Poitiers and Agincourt, the weapon that had seemed for a century to make England invincible, stood in the ruins of English France.